Pǔyí or Pǔyí simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, pinyin, Pǔyí, February 7, 1906 to October 17, 1967, of the Manchu Aisin Gioro clan, was the 12th and last emperor of the Qing dynasty. When he was a child, he reigned as the Xuantong Emperor Chinese, Manchu, Möllendorff, gehungge yoso hūwangdi, in China and Khevt Khan in Mongolia from 1908 until his forced abdication on February 12, 1912, after the Xinhai Revolution. From July 1 to July 12, 1917, he was briefly restored to the throne as emperor by the warlord Zhang Xun. In 1932, after the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, the puppet state of Manchukuo was established by Japan, and he was chosen to become emperor of the new state using the era name of Datong, Ta-tung. In 1934, he was declared the Kangde Emperor, or Kang-te Emperor, of Manchukuo and ruled until the end of the Second Sino-Japanese War in 1945. After the People's Republic of China was established in 1949, Pǔyí was imprisoned as a war criminal for 10 years, wrote his memoirs and became a titular member of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference and the National People's Congress. Pǔyí's name is romanized in English as either Pǔyí or Pǔyí. This naming is in accordance with the Manchu tradition of avoiding the use of a person's clan name and given name together, but is in complete contravention of Chinese tradition, whereby the given name of a ruler was considered taboo and ineffable. However, after Pǔyí lost his imperial title in 1924, he was officially styled Mr. Pǔyí, Mr. Pǔyí, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, pinyin, Pǔyí Xianxian, in Chinese. His clan name Aisin Gioro, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, pinyin, Aisin Gioro, Giles, aa4hsin1 was seldom used. Pǔyí also adopted other names. His Zi, courtesy name, was Yazi, Chinese, pinyin, Yazi, and his Hao, pseudonym, was Haoran, Chinese, pinyin, Haoran. Pǔyí is also known to have used a Western given name, Henry, which was chosen by him from a list of English kings given to him by his English language teacher, Scotsman Reginald Johnston, after Pǔyí asked for an English name. When he ruled as emperor of the Qing dynasty from 1908 to 1912 and during his brief restoration in 1917, Pǔyí's era name was Xuantong, so he was known as the Xuantong Emperor, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, pinyin, Xuantong hūwangdi, Giles, Suan 1 Tn 3 Huang 2 Ti 4, during those two periods of time. As Pǔyí was also the last ruling emperor of China, he is widely known as the last emperor, Chinese, pinyin, Modai Huangdi, Giles, Mo 4 Ti 4 Huang 2 Ti 4, in China and throughout the rest of the world. Some refer to him as the last emperor of the Qing dynasty, Chinese, pinyin, Qing Mod, Giles, Ching 1 Mo 4 Ti 4. Due to his abdication, Pǔyí is also known as Sumdi, Chinese, pinyin, Sumdi, literally, yielded emperor, or Feidi, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, pinyin, Feidi, literally, abrogated emperor. Sometimes the Qing, Chinese, pinyin, Qing, is added in front of the two titles to indicate his affiliation with the Qing dynasty. When Pǔyí ruled the puppet state of Manchukuo and assumed the title of chief executive of the new state, his era name was Datong, Ta-tung. As emperor of Manchukuo from 1934 to 1945, his era name was Kang-te, so he was known as the Kangde Emperor, Chinese, pinyin, Kang hūwangdi, Japanese, Koto Kokodii, during that period of time. A quotation from Pǔyí best summarizes the eunuchs. No account of my childhood would be complete without mentioning the eunuchs. They waited on me when I ate, dressed, and slept. They accompanied me on my walks and to my lessons. They told me stories, and had rewards and beatings from me, but they never left my presence. They were my slaves, and they were my earliest teachers. The eunuchs were slaves who did all the work in the forbidden city, such as cooking, gardening, cleaning, entertaining guests, and the bureaucratic work needed to govern a vast empire. They also served as the emperor's advisors. The eunuchs spoke in a distinctive high-pitched voice, and to further prove that they were really eunuchs had to keep their severed penises and testicles in jars of brine they wore around their necks when working. The forbidden city was full of treasures that the eunuchs constantly stole and sold on the black market. The business of government and of providing for the emperor created further opportunities for corruption, and virtually all the eunuchs engaged in theft and corruption of one sort or another. After his marriage, Pǔyí began to take control of the palace. He described an orgy of looting taking place that involved everyone from the highest to the lowest. According to Pǔyí, by the end of his wedding ceremony, the pearls and jade in the empress's crown had been stolen. Locks were broken, areas ransacked, and on June 27, 1923, a fire destroyed the area around the Palace of Established Happiness. Pǔyí suspected it was arson to cover theft. The emperor overheard conversations among the eunuchs that made him fear for his life. In response, he evicted the eunuchs from the palace. His brother, Pǔyí, was rumored to steal treasures and art collections and sell to wealthy collectors in the black market. His next plan of action was to reform the household department. In this period, he brought in more outsiders to replace the traditional aristocratic officers to improve accountability. He appointed Zhang Xun as Minister of Household Department and Zhang Xun hired Tong Jixu, a former Air Force officer from the Beiyang Army, as his chief of staff to clean up the act. The reform did not last long before Pǔyí was forced out of the Forbidden City by Fan Yuxiang. On October 10, 1911, the army garrison in Wuhan mutinied, sparking a widespread revolt in the Yangtze River Valley and beyond, demanding the overthrow of the Qing dynasty that had ruled China since 1644. The strongman of late imperial China, General Yuan Shikai, was dispatched by the court to crush the revolution, but was unable to, as by 1911 public opinion had turned decisively against the Qing, and many Chinese had no wish to fight for a dynasty that was seen as having lost the mandate of heaven. Pǔyí's father, Prince Xuan, served as a regent until December 6, 1911, when Empress Dowager Longyu took over following the Xinhai Revolution. Empress Dowager Longyu endorsed the imperial edict of the abdication of the Qing Emperor on February 12, 1912 under a deal brokered by Prime Minister Yuan Shikai with the imperial court in Beijing and the Republicans in southern China. At the crucial meeting in the Forbidden City, Pǔyí watched the meeting between Longyu and Yuan, which he remembered as the Dowager Empress was sitting on a Kang platform bed in a side room of the Mayan Nature Palace, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief while a fat old man Yuan knelt on a red cushion before her, tears rolling down his face. I was sitting to the right of the Dowager and wondering why the two adults were crying. There was nobody in the room besides us three and it was very quiet. The fat man was sniffing while he talked and I could not understand what he was saying. This was the occasion Yuan directly brought up the question of abdication. Under the Articles of Favorable Treatment of the Great Qing Emperor after his abdication, signed with the new Republic of China, Pǔyí was to retain his imperial title and be treated by the government of the Republic with a protocol attached to a foreign monarch. This was similar to Italy's Law of Guarantees, 1870, which accorded the Pope certain honors and privileges similar to those enjoyed by the King of Italy. Pǔyí and the imperial court were allowed to remain in the northern half of the Forbidden City, the private apartments, as well as in the Summer Palace. A hefty annual subsidy of 4 million silver taels was granted by the Republic to the imperial household, although it was never fully paid and was abolished after just a few years. Pǔyí himself was not informed in February 1912 that his reign had ended and China was now a republic and continued to believe that he was still emperor for some time. In 1913, when the Empress Dowager Longyu died, President Yuan Shikai arrived at the Forbidden City to pay his respects, which Pǔyí's tutors told him meant that major changes were afoot. The document is dated December 26, 1914. After the abdication of the great Qing Emperor, his title of dignity is to be retained by the Republic of China with the courtesies which it is customary to accord to foreign monarchs. After the abdication of the great Qing Emperor, he will receive from the Republic of China an annual subsidy of 4 million silver taels. After the reform of the currency, this amount will be altered to $4 million, maximum. After the abdication of the great Qing Emperor, he may, as a temporary measure, continue to reside in the palace, in the Forbidden City, but afterwards he will remove himself to the Summer Palace. He may retain his bodyguard. After the abdication of the great Qing Emperor, the temples and mausoleums of the imperial family with their appropriate sacrificial rites shall be maintained in perpetuity. The Republic of China will be responsible for the provision of military guards for their adequate protection. As the Chou Mausoleum of the late Emperor Datong, the Guangxu Emperor, has not yet been completed, the work will be carried out according to the proper regulations relating to imperial tombs. The last ceremonies of sepulture will also be observed in accordance with the ancient rites. The actual expenses will all be borne by the Republic of China. The services of all the persons of various grades hitherto employed in the palace may be retained, but in future no eunuchs are to be added to the staff. After the abdication of the great Qing Emperor, his private property will be safeguarded and protected by the Republic of China. The Imperial Guard Corps as constituted at the time of the abdication will be placed under the military control of the War Office of the Republic of China. It will be maintained at its original strength and will receive the same emoluments as heretofore. Pǔyí soon learned that the real reasons for the Articles of Favorable Settlement was that President Yuan Shikai was planning on restoring the monarchy with himself as the emperor of a new dynasty, and wanted to have Pǔyí as a sort of custodian of the Forbidden City until he could move in. Pǔyí first learned of Yuan's plans to become emperor when he brought in army bands to serenade him whenever he had a meal, and he started on a decidedly imperial take on the presidency. Pǔyí spent hours staring at the presidential palace across from the Forbidden City and cursed Yuan whenever he saw him come and go in his automobile. Pǔyí hated Yuan as a traitor and decided to sabotage his plans to become emperor by hiding the imperial seals, only to be told by his tutors that he would just make new ones. In 1915, Yuan proclaimed himself emperor, but had to abandon his plans in the face of popular opposition. In 1917, the warlord Zhang Xun restored Pǔyí to the throne from July 1 to July 12. Zhang Xun ordered his army to keep their cues to display loyalty to the emperor. During that period, a Republican plane dropped a small bomb over the Forbidden City, causing minor damage. This is considered the first aerial bombardment ever in East Asia. The restoration failed due to extensive opposition across China and the decisive intervention of another warlord, Duan Kirhui. Britain's Sir Reginald Johnston arrived in the Forbidden City as Pǔyí's tutor on March 3, 1919. Pǔyí recalled, "I have never seen foreign men. From the magazines, I noticed they had big mustaches. The eunuchs said the mustaches were very hard and a lantern could be hung at its ends." President Su Shichan believed the monarchy would eventually be restored, and to prepare Pǔyí for the challenges of the modern world had hired Johnston to teach Pǔyí subjects such as political science, constitutional history, and English. Johnston was allowed only 5 texts in English to give Pǔyí to read: Alice in Wonderland in translations into English of the 4 great books of Confucianism, the Analects, the Mencius, the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean. But he disregarded the rules, and taught Pǔyí about world history with a special focus on British history. Johnston also told Pǔyí so much about his native Scotland that Pǔyí eventually expressed the desire to visit the Scotland the Brave that his tutor spoke of with such pride and love. Besides history, Johnston taught Pǔyí philosophy and about what he saw as the superiority of monarchies to republics. Pǔyí remembered that his tutor's piercing blue eyes made me feel uneasy. I found him very intimidating and studied English with him like a good boy, not daring to talk about other things when I got bored, as I did with my other Chinese tutors. As the only person capable of controlling Pǔyí, Johnston had much more influence than his title of English tutor would suggest, as the eunuchs began to rely on him to steer Pǔyí away from his more capricious moods. When the 14-year-old Pǔyí had some Western-style clothing purchased to wear from a theater company, Johnston flew into a rage, saying that Pǔyí was wearing cheap clothing unworthy of an emperor, and had him buy expensive clothes from a Western-style department store, saying, "If you wear clothes from a second-hand shop, you won't be a gentleman, you'll be." Pǔyí noted he was unable to finish his sentence. Under Johnston's influence, Pǔyí started to insist that his eunuchs address him as Henry and later his wife Wanrong as Elizabeth as Pǔyí began to speak English, a mixture of Mandarin and English that became his preferred mode of speech. Pǔyí recalled of Johnston, "I thought everything about him was first-rate. He made me feel that Westerners were the most intelligent and civilized people in the world and that he was the most learned of Westerners and that Johnston had become the major part of my soul." In May 1919, Pǔyí noticed the protests in Beijing generated by the May 4th movement as thousands of Chinese university students protested against the decision by the great powers at the Paris Peace Conference to award the former German concessions in Shandong province together with the former German colony of Qingdao to Japan. For Pǔyí, the May 4th movement, which he asked Johnston about, was a revelation as it marked the first time in his life that he noticed that people outside the Forbidden City had concerns that were not about him. Pǔyí could not speak Manchu, he only knew a single word in the language, Ili, arise. Despite studying Manchu for years, he admitted that it was his worst subject among everything he studied. According to the journalist S.M. Ali, Pǔyí spoke Mandarin when interviewed but Ali believed he could understand English. Johnston also introduced Pǔyí to the new technology of cinema, and Pǔyí was so delighted with the movies, especially Harold Lloyd films, that he had a film projector installed in the Forbidden City despite the opposition of the eunuchs who disliked foreign technology in the Forbidden City. Johnston was also the first to argue that Pǔyí needed glasses, as he was extremely nearsighted, and after much argument with Prince Xuan, who thought it was undignified for an emperor to wear glasses, finally prevailed. Johnston, who spoke fluent Mandarin, closely followed the intellectual scene in China, and introduced Pǔyí to the new-style Chinese books and magazines, which so inspired Pǔyí that he wrote several poems that were published anonymously in New China publications. In 1922, Johnston had his friend, the writer Hu Shi, visit the Forbidden City to teach Pǔyí about recent developments in Chinese literature. Under Johnston's influence, Pǔyí embraced the bicycle as a way to exercise, cut his queue and grew a full head of hair, and wanted to go to study at Oxford, Johnston's alma mater. Johnston also introduced Pǔyí to the telephone, which Pǔyí soon became addicted to, phoning people in Beijing at random just to hear their voices on the other end. Johnston also pressured Pǔyí to cut down on the waste and extravagance in the Forbidden City, noting that all the eunuchs had to be fed. Johnston convinced Pǔyí that he could open doors for himself and did not need eunuchs standing idly all the time by the main doors of the palaces just to open them if he should happen along. Pǔyí cut off his queue so he would look like a Western gentleman, and under Johnston's advice embraced the bicycle as the best way to move about in the Forbidden City, retaining a lifelong enthusiasm for cycling, though it is doubtful that the eunuchs working as gardeners much appreciated Pǔyí's habit of riding through the flowers. On October 23, 1924, a coup led by the warlord Feng Yuxiang took control of Beijing. Feng, the latest of the warlords to take Beijing, was seeking legitimacy and decided that abolishing the unpopular Articles of Favorable Settlement was an easy way to win the crowd's approval. Feng unilaterally revised the Articles of Favorable Treatment on November 5, 1924, abolishing Pǔyí's imperial title and privileges and reducing him to a private citizen of the Republic of China. Pǔyí was expelled from the Forbidden City the same day. He was given 3 hours to leave. He spent a few days at the house of his father Prince Xuan, and then temporarily resided in the Japanese embassy in Beijing. Pǔyí left his father's house together with Johnston and his chief servant Bigli without informing Prince Chun's servants, who followed them in another car while 2 policemen joined on the sides of Pǔyí's car, leading to a wild car chase through Beijing as Pǔyí's chauffeur tried to lose the servant's car before Pǔyí was able to slip into a jewelry store and into a carriage that took him to the Japanese legation. Pǔyí had originally wanted to go to the British legation, but the Japanophile Johnston had insisted that he would be safer with the Japanese. For Johnston, the Japanese system where the Japanese people worshipped their emperor as a living god was much closer to his ideal political system than the British system of a constitutional monarchy, and he constantly steered Pǔyí in a pro-Japanese direction. Pǔyí's advisor Liu Zhongyue, who was secretly working for the Japanese, suggested that Pǔyí move to Tianjin, which he argued was safer than Beijing, though the real reason was that the Japanese felt that Pǔyí would be easier to control in Tianjin without the embarrassment of having him live in the Japanese legation, which was straining relations with China. On February 23, 1925, Pǔyí left Beijing for Tianjin wearing a simple Chinese gown and skullcap as he was afraid of being robbed on the train. Mao Zedong started the Cultural Revolution in 1966, and the youth militia known as the Maoist Red Guards saw Pǔyí, who symbolized Imperial China, as an easy target. Pǔyí was placed under protection by the local Public Security Bureau and, although his food rations, salary, and various luxuries, including his sofa and desk, were removed, he was not publicly humiliated as was common at the time. The Red Guards attacked Pǔyí for his book From Emperor to Citizen because it had been translated into English and French, which displeased the Red Guards and led to copies of the book being burned in the streets. Various members of the Qing family, including Pǔyí, had their homes raided and burned by the Red Guards, but Zhou Enlai used his influence to protect Pǔyí and the rest of the Qing from the worst abuses inflicted by the Red Guard. Jin Yuan, the man who had remodeled Pǔyí in the 1950s, fell victim to the Red Guard and became a prisoner in Fushun for several years, while Li Wenda, who had ghostwritten From Emperor to Citizen, spent 7 years in solitary confinement. But Pǔyí had aged and his health began to decline. He died in Beijing of complications arising from kidney cancer and heart disease on October 17, 1967 at the age of 61. In accordance with the laws of the People's Republic of China at the time, Pǔyí's body was cremated. His ashes were first placed at the Baboghan Revolutionary Cemetery, alongside those of other party and state dignitaries. This was the burial ground of imperial concubines and eunuchs prior to the establishment of the People's Republic of China. In 1995, as a part of a commercial arrangement, Puyi's ashes were transferred by his widow Li Xuxian to a new commercial cemetery named Hualong Imperial Cemetery, in return for monetary support. The cemetery is near the western Qing Dunes, 120 kilometers 75 miles southwest of Beijing, where 4 of the 9 Qing emperors preceding him are interred, along with 3 empresses and 69 princes, princesses, and imperial concubines. The Last Emperor, a 1986 Hong Kong film, Chinese title, literally means fire dragon, directed by Li Hanxiang. Tony Leung Ka-fai played Puyi. The Last Emperor, a 1987 film directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. John Lone played the adult Puyi. Aisin Gioro Puyi, a 2005 Chinese documentary film on the life of Puyi. Produced by CCTV, it was part of a series of 10 documentary films about 10 historical persons. The Founding of a Party, a 2011 Chinese film directed by Huang Jiangxin and Han Sanping. Child actor Yan Ruihan played Puyi. 1911, a 2011 historical film directed by Jackie Chan and Zhang Li. The film tells of the founding of the Republic of China when Sun Yat-sen led the Xinhai Revolution to overthrow the Qing dynasty. The 5-year-old Puyi is played by child actor Su Heni. Although Puyi's time on screen is short, there are significant scenes showing how the emperor was treated at court before his abdication at the age of 6. The Misadventure of Xun, a 1981 Hong Kong television series produced by TVB. Adam Chin played an adult Puyi. Modai Hūwangdi literally means the last emperor, a 1988 Chinese television series based on Puyi's autobiography From Emperor to Citizen, with Puyi's brother Pǔyí as a consultant for the series. Chen Daoming starred as Puyi. Fichang Gongmin literally means unusual citizen, a 2002 Chinese television series directed by Chen Hao. Data Wang starred as Puyi. Rota no Ohi, Seigo no Kodai, Chinese title, a 2003 Japanese television series about Pǔyí and Hero Saga. Wen Bozhao played Puyi. Modai Huangfi literally means the last imperial consort, a 2003 Chinese television series. Li Yaping played Puyi. Modai Huangdi Chuangqi literally means the legend of the last emperor, a 2015 Hong Kong/China television collaboration, 59 episodes, each 45 minutes, starring Winston Chow. The Autobiography of Puyi, ghostwritten by Li Wenda. The title of the Chinese book is usually rendered in English as From Emperor to Citizen. The book was re-released in China in 2007 in a new corrected and revised version. Many sentences which had been deleted from the 1964 version prior to its publication were now included. Aisin Gioro, Puyi, 2002, 1964. The First Half of My Life, From Emperor to Citizen, the Autobiography of Aisin Gioro Puyi, in Chinese. Foreign Languages Press. ISBN 978-7-119-00772-4. Original. Pǔyí, Henry, 2010, 1967. The Last Manchu, the Autobiography of Henry Pǔyí, Last Emperor of China. Skyhorse Publishing. ISBN 978-1-60239-732-3. Translation. Headland, Isaac Taylor, 1909. Court Life in China. F. H. Revell. ISBN 978-0-585-15029-1. Fenby, Jonathan, 2004. Chiang Kai-shek, China's Generalissimo and the Nation He Lost. New York, Carroll and Graf. ISBN 978-0786713189. Driscoll, Mark, 2010. Absolute Erotic, Absolute Grotesque, The Living, the Dead, and the Undead in Japan's Imperialism, 1895-1945. Durham, Duke University Press. ISBN 978-0822347613. Johnston, Reginald Fleming, 1934-2008. Twilight in the Forbidden City. Soulcare Publishing. ISBN 978-0-9680459-5-4. Li Xuxian, 2006, 1984. My Husband Pǔyí, Pǔyí/Li Xuxian Koshu, 1 Qingxiang Zhen Li, Changchun Shijing Xiaowen Shiziliu Yanjiao Yuan Hui Bian. Xuanguo Xi and Huashu Zhenjing Xiao. ISBN 978-7-208-00167-1. Puyi's fifth wife Li Shuxian. Memories of their life together were ghost-written by Wang Qingxian. An English version translated by NINA was published by China Travel and Tourism Press. Bear, Edward, 1987. The Last Emperor. Toronto, Futura. ISBN 978-0-7088-3439-8. Companion to Bernardo Bertolucci's film of the same name. Young, Louise, 1998. Japan's Total Empire, Manchuria and the Culture of Wartime Imperialism. Los Angeles, University of California Press. ISBN 978-0520219342. Weinberg, Gerhard, 2005. A World in Arms: A Global History of World War II. Cambridge, Cambridge University Press. ISBN 978-0-521-61826-7. Chinese Emperor's Family Tree, Late. Dynasties in Chinese History. List of heads of regimes who were later imprisoned. List of monarchs who lost their thrones in the 20th century,